Welcome, my friends, to the 103rd episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. Today is a great day, as always, but it's mo better because I've got a sales guy in the house, fellow salesman, Jeff Shore. Jeff's got a great history. I won't steal too much of his thunder, but longtime sales guy. He was the national director of a Fortune 500 company. He was with that company for 11 years. This guy knows selling. But then, kind of like me, he realized he was climbing the corporate ladder, and the ladder was on the wrong building. So he left. He's been doing his own thing now for at least 15 years. He's got a team of 9. At this point, he's an author and really opens up. He holds nothing back on what it takes to grow, what it takes to be a salesperson in today's day and age, right, where everybody can find anything they want online. They can get educated. They can find all the answers, or at least they think they can. So how do you turn that to your advantage? So that's just one of the many things we get into during this great interview with Jeff. So enjoy Mr. Jeff Shore. Jeff Shore, author of 4 books, most recently Be Bold and Win the Sale, all the way from Northern California. Welcome to the Sales Podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks, Wes. Appreciate you having me on. Absolutely.
Hey, I love sales training, talking with people, and I ran across a few of your videos, and I've had a couple of others on. You did a 4-person show once. You had Jill Conrath. I've had on the show. You had Larry Winget. Mm-hmm. I've had him on recently, but I haven't had Mark Sanborn. So maybe you can help me meet him one time. But I appreciate your expertise and your wisdom. And, for those that don't know you, would you mind take a minute or two, kind of tell us who you are and what makes you tick, and we'll dive into it?
Sure. Thanks. I'm a sales wonk. I love sales. I just really enjoy the psychology. I really enjoy the principles of influence and really how to make a big difference in the lives of the people that we do business with every day. But I really do look at it and say there's nothing old school about me. I detest the entire vision of the plaid jacket, white shoes, medallions. What's it going to take to get you to buy my product today? I just hate all of that stuff. I just think we're in a better day and a more sophisticated day. So it's really all about how do you sell the way that a customer wants to buy. I think every sales process should be designed accordingly. I'm a former national sales director for a Fortune 500 company in the United States, and I've been out on my own for the last 15 years consulting, speaking, training, and we've got a 9-person sales training company working all over North America and to some extent in the Middle East, and just living the dream and having a great time. Very
cool. So all right, so 15 years. So you got out right at the peak of the .com bubble, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
How was that? It was probably, if I had to guess, probably an easy transition because things were so good, but then boom, the bubble burst and 9/11 came. I mean, did you have some rocky times in there?
Well, it was interesting because, first of all, I was at this in this corporate position for 11 years, and starting in a frontline sales position, and then director of sales, VP of sales, eventually national sales director for this corporation. And it was one of those things where, Stephen Covey put it this way: what happens when you're climbing the ladder, and then you look around and you go, uh-oh, this ladder's on the wrong wall. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened to me. So it was one of those weird things where eventually, I had 9 good years with that company, but I was there for 11. And by the time we were at the end, it was very clear that, all right, that stint was over. And so then it was a matter of, well, now what do I do? And I'd like to say that I sat down and I took all kinds of psychological profiles and figured out, okay, I know exactly what I need to do. I want to consult, I want to speak, I want to write, I want to train. That's it. The reality is I didn't know what I was going to do, but I hung out a shingle and just called a few friends and said, hey, you got any pickup work? And the next thing you know, I need a fax machine. You remember fax machines? I need business cards. I need to learn QuickBooks, and the business just absolutely took off. And now I'm just it just didn't take me long to find my passion. So to the question of, okay, well, you're right there in this economic turmoil of the .com bust. I honestly go with the idea that if your passion is strong enough, and you know specifically what you want to accomplish, then you make yourself somewhat market proof. So that's a long way of saying no. It didn't really. It didn't have an impact on me because I was really just, you know what it's like, and I'm sure you went through the same thing, Wes. Right, when you're first starting out, you got all of the energy, all the drive, all the desire. That's going to overcome a lot. That sort of rookie greenness that we tend to lose a little bit as veterans, right?
Oh yeah, the grizzled veteran, right? So, what are you teaching people now? I mean, the world has certainly changed, right? The world is flat. E-commerce is everywhere. Social media is everywhere. It is a new day and age. I mean, is the salesperson even still needed now, or can we just get a Twitter profile and an Amazon account and just go make money?
Yeah. I think, first of all, the salesperson is needed more than ever. It's just a totally different salesperson. The access to information on behalf of our buyers today has leveled the playing field so significantly. There was a time when I first started in the sales business, I could hoard all of the information and I could sort of keep it very close to the vest and say, well, you can have this piece of information and that piece of information and this piece of information, but I think I'll hold back on this over here. Well, that transparency is prevalent now, and that information is available to everyone. So now the question, and this is why the salesperson is more important, but also has a much more difficult job. The question is not what is the information. The question is why does the information mean something? And that's where today's salesperson becomes a different creature. They have to understand, how does this information apply to each specific individual? Why am I sitting across the table from you right now in the first place? I think it's the single most important question that any salesperson can ask. Why am I here? You could have talked to a lot of people. You agreed to talk to me, which means something is not right in your life. And if what I bring to you doesn't help, then we're going to waste both of our time. So let's start here. Tell me why I am here. I mean, that's really going to be the core of the conversation. Because if we can't figure out how to apply the information, then at that point the salesperson is irrelevant. They have no purpose to be there.
So, I want to look at two things from a sales standpoint. With the first being, what do you tell the employee, the corporate salesperson that, is just maybe they were working for you, right? Maybe there's some new salespeople that old company used to work at. They don't have control over the marketing. They don't have control over the literature. They can't write any blog posts. A lot of companies even control their social media. So what role does that salesperson take, right? I mean, because do you feel like their hands are a little more tied, or working for a big brand like that, does it help them in this day and age?
Yeah, well, it certainly gives them a greater array of solutions that should really help them. But when I say solutions, it should bring to mind one particular word: problems. I mean, there's no such thing as a solution if we haven't identified the problem. So my view on that is that it doesn't matter if you're working for a big company or a small company. The conversation has to start with this concept. And let me put it this way, Wes. When I meet a salesperson who is brand new to the sales business, I always give them exactly the same advice. And I will tell them this. When you meet that customer for the first time, the most important thing that you can know and the most important mindset that you can have is this: you don't know the backstory. You don't know the backstory. They're meeting with you because they're thinking about what they're moving to, but you got to figure out what they're coming from, because there is no front story until there's a backstory. You've got to learn the backstory. I think too many salespeople are consumed with what the customer is moving to, and we need to figure out what the customer is coming from. If you figure out where that customer is coming from, if you understand the backstory, then the front story, the solution, what they're moving to, is going to roll out right in front of you. The problem is we're still in this day and age where salespeople are touting their shiny objects and telling you how great their product is and what they're moving to. And by the way, I just got out of sales training and I learned all of these technical aspects that I'm about to bore you with. None of that matters if I don't understand what you're coming from. So there's really got to be that you go first type of mentality in the salesperson to say, let's figure out what the problem is, because if I can't solve it, I'm going to save us both a lot of time.
Well, so that brings up a good point. You go first. And how can a salesperson tee that up? Because traditional training is, here's all the speeds and fees. Here's all the blinky blue lights. Go get them, Tiger.
Right.
And there's not the approach of the backstory, know? So how does that poor guy in the field know they have to do that?
Right. Well, two quick thoughts on that. First of all, a few years back when my daughter's car gave out, and she was in college at the time, so I knew I was going to buy her a car when she graduated. She was a junior. I said, well, guess what? You're getting your car now. And she was home for a weekend. So we went out on a Saturday. She was driving back from Northern to Southern California on Sunday, which means Saturday afternoon, we were not car shopping. We were car buying. Mm-hmm. I mean, the last thing I said to my wife is, you got the checkbook, and we were going to go out and buy a car. And now here we are, she doesn't have a car. She has no way to get home. And I'm concerned about her safety and security. This is important information. We went to 4 dealerships and not one salesperson figured it out. Now, I wasn't going to give it away for free, but if you asked me the question, I was going to answer it. What did they want to talk about? Price, terms, warranty, color, everything that we were moving to, but nobody figured out what we were coming from. And the issue that we're up against there is that salesperson is, if they understand where we're coming from, then they're going to know what we're moving to. It'll help them so much better. But that's just, again, that's standard operating procedure these days. I would recommend to salespeople that if you're going to be sitting down with a customer, I gave this advice recently actually to a guy who's got a marketing company, an online marketing company, and he's got great product, he's got a great presence, and he's done quite well, but his sales presentation was flawed. And I gave him the advice to set up the entire conversation with some form of "why am I here?" question. So what he did is he formed his sales presentation to sit down with the client and say to them, and I had said this a little bit just a moment ago, but to say to them, look, you have a lot of people who ask for your time. You can't give it to everybody, but you gave it to me, which means something in your online world right now is not working. If you were totally satisfied with the way things are going, you wouldn't have agreed to talk to me. And I don't want to tell you how great we are if I don't have the solution to whatever your problem is. So let's just talk about you. Let's talk about your issues. Let's talk about why. And then if I can help you, I'll help. And if not, I'll save us both some time. Mm-hmm. You go first. That was the essence of the conversation. And they got deep into the weeds as to what the frustration that customer was dealing with. And then the solution appeared, and it made it very, very easy to get it over the finish line at that point.
You kind of answered the next question I was going to ask, which was, how do we get that prospect to talk? Because so many have been burned and lied to, and they had their defenses up. It's like, salesperson, deflector shields up.
Yeah.
And so we need something like that, right? You have access to all this info. Basically, why me? Just be that direct, huh?
I think so. I would go so far as to, I teach a technique called permission to question, the opportunity to say to a customer early on in the conversation, look, if I can ask you just 3 quick questions, I think I can make this a whole lot easier on both of us, right? Something along the lines of says, I can help you a lot if I can ask 3 quick questions. You're asking for permission to ask questions, which just shows respect. You're telling them it's just 3 quick questions, meaning it's not going to take very long. And I'm going to make your life a lot easier, which means this is for you and not for me. So yeah, I do think that customers come in with a justifiable barrier against salespeople, and we have to prove to them that this is not going to hurt, that this is going to be for you, that we can make this so much easier. That is so much, that's music to the ears of a customer when you compare it to, may I take 15 minutes and describe all the bells and whistles on this shiny new product.
Does this work equally as well for the smaller business, even the solopreneur?
I think it works better for the solopreneur because from that perspective, the single look, when you look at every customer, what does every customer want? Every customer wants to be understood. Big or small, they want to be understood. But for that Smaller company, they're looking at it and they're going, okay, if I'm a solopreneur and I've got to sell my product, then I'm going to be able to look at it and say, I can understand you bigger or better than the big boys can. But if you're working for the big company, you can look at it and say, I got to shed this image that we're impersonal, and I do that by getting to know you individually. So either way, it comes down to this one-on-one conversation. So I look at it from this perspective, and I've several years ago, I developed a formula that I've been teaching, and the trainers on my team have been teaching for several years. I'll share it with you now. It's really the formula for how people make buying decisions. If you look at it, these three things have to be in place in order for people to buy. And the formula looks like this. People will buy when their current dissatisfaction times their future promise is greater than their cost and their fear. Their current dissatisfaction times their future promise must be greater than cost plus fear. And that formula is sequential. It starts with current dissatisfaction. If I am not currently dissatisfied with this aspect of my life, I wouldn't be talking to you in the first place. The fact that a customer is willing to talk to a salesperson indicates right from the start something is wrong. Right? Just think about walking into a mattress store. If I'm selling mattresses, let me tell you what, I'm going to have a 90% conversion rate on people who come through the door, because I'm not going to ask them, can I help you, and look around and see if I have any questions. I know the person who walks in the mattress store needs a mattress, and they need it today. Nobody is window shopping for a mattress. The moment that they walk through my door, they're tipping their hand that there's a current dissatisfaction. So it starts with understanding that dissatisfaction. Now we have the future promise, this vision of what their life can look like contrasted to their current dissatisfaction. The future promise is not features. The future promise is not about all of the details. The future promise is about how much my life will have improved once I've taken this step. So I take the current dissatisfaction, if it is sky high, multiplied by the future promise, because there is an exponential a relationship between those two things. Those things have to be greater than my cost and my fear. So if I'm a buyer, I've got cost considerations, I've got price issues, I've got comparisons, but I also have fear. Fear of making the wrong decision, fear of looking bad in front of my peers, fear of whether or not I gave into a great sales presentation, but bought a bad product. So when I'm looking at it as a salesperson, if I lead by trying to alleviate the cost and fear, it's not tied to anything. I got to figure out what the problem is first, and then show them why my solution is better than anybody else's. If I can do that, then those cost fear elements are greatly reduced. But if you try and have a price discussion first, you can forget it. You've lost the sale and you barely got started.
Well, I always talk about a salesperson's job is hurt and rescue. Would you agree with that? Like we got to bring out that pain. We got to really help them understand just how dissatisfied they are, which is why they're there in the first place.
Well, yeah. I mean, the dissatisfaction is there. And if you look at it this way, everybody makes decisions essentially for the same reason. We all have a desire to improve our life, right? So whether I'm buying 10 copy machines for my company, or whether I'm buying a car, or whether I'm buying a sandwich, we make decisions for the same reason. We have a desire to improve our life. Well, what does that mean? It means that something's not right with my life. And so, it's not really a matter of creating dissatisfaction. If the dissatisfaction wasn't there, they wouldn't even talk to you in the first place. It's a matter of identifying and helping that customer understand, if you're here because you want your life to improve, well, the sooner you make a move, the sooner your life improves. So if you stay on the path you're at right now, that hurt and pain that you identify with is going to increase. But if you move forward to this future promise, you're just going to have a better life by the time you're done.
Right. Well, I mean, how much is it our job to make that prospect uncomfortable? And what I mean by that is maybe asking tougher questions. I always equate it to like a doctor. You're uncomfortable, right? You got to strip down. You wear this robe that doesn't button. It's a cold place. You're sitting on crinkly paper. we're not comfortable. But the doctor doesn't care. It's like, I need access to you, so just do it. It's for your own good. I mean, do you see, do we have that type of obligation to kind of, it's okay to make that prospect uncomfortable if that's what it takes to get to the truth?
Yeah. Well, I guess it depends on what. That's a really good question, Wes. I think it depends on what type of discomfort we're talking about here. So if I'm going back to your example of a doctor, if my doctor looks at it and says, "Hey Jeff, you're 50 pounds overweight." Now I look at it and go, "Yeah, I know, I get it. I have a mirror. I know I'm overweight. I get it." If that doctor looks at it and says, "Jeff, just so you know, I'm going to give you about 12 to 24 months to live before I expect that your heart's going to explode in your chest or you're going to go into a diabetic coma unless you change your lifestyle." Well, now that's raising discomfort right there. And that's the type of thing where if we can work it for our customers to look at it and say, if you're talking to me because you have pain, so what happens if you don't get this solved? What happens if you don't move forward? But the converse of that is the sooner you move forward, the sooner you improve your life and that future promise starts to materialize. So, yeah, I think what we have to do is make our customer uncomfortable with the inevitability of not acting on what is already in their best interest. And that's really the issue. I think so many customers are gripped by the fear of making a mistake, by the fear of moving forward. We do need to initiate the fear of staying put. Again, assuming that that's in the best interest of the customer.
Right. Well, of course. Cool. So how should people leverage social media and all the online information? You started out saying, it's a better day for sales today, than ever. And would you say it's a better day for honest salespeople? Maybe the dishonest ones have a harder time hiding now because things are so transparent and there is so much information for the prospect?
Yeah. I think it's a better day for servant-minded salespeople for sure. It's a better day for salespeople who are extremely intelligent and know how to use it. There's no doubt about it. But as it relates specifically to social media, I would look at it and say that sales, there is a very profound role for social media, but it's not for salespeople to tout how great they are and how great their product is. I mean, you can do some product advertising along those lines, but ultimately the social media has to address the question of how is your life improved. I think the best use of social media as a sales tool is to spotlight those people who have made the decision and are happy for it, are better off for it. So, wherever you can, if you can get engagement with those people who made the call, they bought your product, and their life was better because of it. Those are the stories that you want to tell. Those are the stories that validate and verify that this is, in fact, a good move on my part. So, yeah, I think that it is a better day for sales. I think it's a more enjoyable day because there's a much greater sense of partnership. When I'm, for example, working with our client base, we make it very clear right from the very beginning that if you're looking for a transactional relationship between us and one of our clients, you come to the wrong place. It's transformational. If I don't have the opportunity for a transformational relationship, then I don't want to do business with that company. So, and I think that salespeople should look at it the same way. If it's just simply a transaction and the next paycheck out there, I'm not sure that you're really long for this business. But if you can look at it and say, no, I want to have transformational relationships with my client base. I want to change the way that they live their lives. I think that's a more noble way to look at it.
So what does this mean, be bold and win the sale?
Well, this is, first of all, it's the title of my most recent book. I've been on a journey over the last several years to determine what makes the best salespeople on the planet so darn good. And the thing that's interesting, and Wes, my guess is that you've probably noticed some of these same things, that you see top performers, some of which who are extremely outgoing and affable and gregarious, but others who are fairly laid back and maybe more stoic and cerebral, yet still very, very good at what they do. Or if you look at Some salespeople are maybe they're long-term veterans and they've got this figured out over a long period of time. But then you get new people who step into the sales business and they're just on fire right from the very beginning. So, I was trying to figure out, well, what are the characteristics of top performers? What are the characteristics of people who really separate themselves? And the one that kept coming back to me over and over again was the question of what do we do when we face discomfort in the sales process? There's an argument to be made that the sales presentation, the sales process is full of these uncomfortable moments. And when people look at it and say, well, I'm not good for sales, I'm not cut out for sales, I think what they're really saying is I can't handle the discomfort that comes about. I think top performers are defined by their ability to deal with that discomfort and respond in boldness. So when I talk about boldness, I'm not talking about slick or manipulative or loud or obnoxious by any way. To me, boldness is doing the right thing for the customer despite your discomfort. But if we can look at it and say, every time that we are uncomfortable in the sales process, we have a decision to make. Every moment of discomfort leads to a moment of decision. And I contend that it is the quality of the decisions in that moment of discomfort that will make or break the salesperson, that will define great salespeople. Great salespeople simply respond differently in that time of discomfort.
What do you mean by discomfort? I mean, I like to think, after all these years, kind of like a doctor. I'm not uncomfortable when the patient disrobes, right? I mean, it's like, you just got to do it. Seen one, seen them all.
Yeah.
What is that? Because I try to make sure there is no discomfort, at least for me, right? Yeah. Because I'm asking the hard questions.
Right.
So can you elaborate on that?
Sure, absolutely. So when it comes to discomfort, or what I call comfort addictions, or desire for comfort, it is those moments that are going to pop up on a regular basis that are going to cause any type of angst that would require a decision. So this is not a contest. It affects everybody differently. So if it might be easier to start that journey outside of sales for just a moment. So if I look at it and say, let's just say physical well-being, okay? My elliptical machine is uncomfortable. It's not designed to be comfortable. It's uncomfortable. My sofa is comfortable. So that bears a decision right from the very beginning. Do I want to get on the elliptical? Do I want to go lie down and watch television, right? Broccoli uncomfortable, cheeseburger comfortable. Or if I look at it and say my tendency towards procrastination, I don't procrastinate on things that I find comfortable. It's very comfortable. I do it right away. I only procrastinate on things that are uncomfortable. When I look at the telephone, I'm a face-to-face guy. I'd rather be face-to-face than to pick up the phone and call people. So I got some telephone discomforts along those lines. And this isn't a contest. It's not a right or wrong, but we see these potential moments of discomfort all throughout the process. So maybe it's a prospecting call. Maybe it's a price objection. Maybe it's dealing with mean people who think that they can just abuse salespeople for sport. Maybe it's time to ask for the sale, or the follow-up call, or to ask for a referral, or a challenge on a specific product objection. So we've got all of these different moments that, again, it's different for every salesperson, right? But we got all of these different moments where if I can identify a discomfort, if I look at it and I go, well, that makes me uncomfortable right there, then I can say, okay, I have a decision to make. What kind of decision will I make? So I would look at it and say, there's nothing wrong with being uncomfortable. It's only a question of what we do when we are uncomfortable. But I contend that a lot of salespeople, they give into that desire for comfort. They do the comfortable thing, and then they justify it. And then they make up these rationalizing stories as to why it makes sense. So I know I could make the phone call, but it's 2014, and people prefer email. I know I can do some prospecting right now, so I'll do it through Facebook posts. I'll just put a bunch of Facebook posts, and I'll call that prospecting. I know that I shouldn't give in on this price, but I can. I'm just trying to serve the customer, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So it's all of these different opportunities that come up all throughout the sales presentation that really define us after a while. They make that point, and I would contend that the best salespeople out there are not the ones who are not uncomfortable. they're the ones who, when they have that little moment inside, that they make better choices in that moment. Did that make sense, Wes?
Yep, I got it. Cool. Thank you for that. But I'm still not telling my wife that I'm comfortable changing the diaper. So, you know, I'm not plowing through that. I am accepting my limitations. Okay.
Fair enough. Well, look, on the big picture, even beyond sales, for me personally, I have been on a quest for the last several years I don't have a bucket list, I have a discomfort list. It's a list of things that I have always wanted to do or know that I should do, but I have not done because there are discomfort barriers out there. So I've been trying to systematically line those up. And in some cases, it comes down to, tough conversations or getting your life in order in certain ways. But in other cases, it's things that I've always wanted to do that, but I've always been too uncomfortable to really step forward and pay the price. So, for me, that means, just as an example, at age 52, this year I joined an adult learn to play ice hockey league. So I've been a hockey fan since I was a little boy, but I don't know how to ice skate. So I'm looking at it and going, oh man, I wish I could do that. Well, every time we say, I wish I could do that, we got to check ourselves, because when we look at it, I wish I could do that. Really? Do you really wish you could do that? Because if you really wished you could do that, you'd probably give it a shot. And so I joined this league and I worked my tail off so that I could make a team for the fall season. And it was massively uncomfortable to figure out how to skate, how to play hockey, how to do all of that. But now I'm finding in my life in general that I'm living a better, richer, fuller life because I am systematically and intentionally embracing my discomforts. On the business side, oh my goodness, my business has just exploded over the last few years as I have really applied those principles to try and figure out what have I not done in my life because I'm uncomfortable. Now, one last thing, to your point, Wes, I don't have things on those lists that are uncomfortable that I just don't want to do, i.e. changing diapers, right? It's not important to me. I don't want to do it. That's fine. But for the things that are nagging inside that say you should do this, whether it relates to your sales presentation or your life in general, those are the things that I've been on a journey to embrace. And there's kind of it's been fun to watch this movement happening in the lives of other people who are looking at those discomforts in their life that they have set aside and rationalized away, and recognizing they can live better, richer, fuller lives when they embrace their discomfort.
If I got on the ice, I would have to be in one of those big sumo wrestler suits that you see, they do at the baseball games.
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of padding, but there's no question. If you're afraid to fall, you picked the wrong sport. No doubt about that.
Oh my gosh. I grew up in the South. I played football. I remember the first time I ever saw hockey was actually the Air Force Academy. I was on a recruiting trip. They brought me up there, and it was in February of 88. 88 in January, February. And we sat right next to the glass. And, man, this dude got checked so hard through the plexiglass that it popped it out at the bottom. And his arm went through, and the plexiglass came back in and pinned him to it. And he was screaming. I was like right in front of me. I mean, I could touch him.
Man.
But it was the other team, so we just laughed at him. I said, hey, this hockey thing might be okay, but, they weren't recruiting me for hockey.
That's it.
Oh, man. Well, that's been fantastic. Thank you, sir. So your latest book, they can get on your website, right, at jeffshore.com?
Yeah, they can go, or Amazon.com, available as book and also in Kindle form on Amazon as well.
Okay. Yeah. Very nice. And where should people reach out to you? Just jeffshore.com?
Yeah, everything is available through jeffshore.com. If you want, there's quick links there to follow our Facebook page or our Twitter or a blog. I'm a prolific blogger. I'm very engaged on social media. And I would say just something about that real quick. The idea of social media is social, which means engagement. The idea here is not to try and post ads on Facebook. The idea here is to engage your audience, to have real conversations, even if they're short conversations, to have real conversations. It just sort of drives me a little bit crazy when I see nothing but here's how great we are on social media. I think we need to have really real conversations with our customers.
Yeah, I mean, people know the truth, right? And they just Yeah, it's so funny. I use the analogy all the time. Social media, first of all, is social, right? I mean, you wouldn't walk into the 4th of July party and just, got bumper stickers on your head, passing out flyers.
Right.
You grab a beer, get a hot dog, and chill out for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, very cool. Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate you sharing your words of wisdom.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Wes.
All right, man. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Be authentic. Have real conversations with people. Wow, pretty shocking, huh? How's that for getting rid of the myth of cheesy, pushy, say anything, do anything salespeople? I love the way Jeff talked about top performers are defined by their ability to identify the discomfort and take bold action in that moment. I've always said it's our job as salespeople to be comfortable, making our prospects uncomfortable, and then just absorbing, sitting there, being present in the silence. Okay, let them be uncomfortable until they begin really to answer their own questions. And at that point, because you're the one that asked the hard questions, they assume you have the answer. And, like a good attorney who never asks a question they don't know the answer to, you shouldn't be asking questions you don't have the answer to, okay? So by knowing your product, by knowing your offering, by knowing your limits and your capabilities, you'll ask the right questions. It will make the prospect uncomfortable. They will then turn around, and after a moment of silence, after they hem and haw a bit, they will say, "Can you help me?" That's how I think selling is done today. I really think that's how it's been done all along. Yes, there are pushy people, other sales trainers out there that'll tell you to go for the hard close. They'll tell you to spend all the time on the close because that's where it all happens. And I could not disagree more. If you open better, if you qualify better, if you disqualify better, the sale becomes a natural conclusion for those who are ready, willing, and able to buy what it is you're selling. So go back and re-listen to this. Jeff's got a lot of nuggets in there. Check out his book, Be Bold and Win the Sale. And then when you're done with that, visit 30daysalesgrowth.com. Enroll in my own 30-day sales training. Type in the word podcast, all lowercase, in the promo code and save yourself some money when you do that. And thanks again for listening. If you get another moment, feel free to leave a 5-star review on iTunes or on social media. Shout it out on Twitter. And as always, remember to sell different.